Good afternoon. Name is Misha Milchenko. I will very briefly discuss converting an arbitrary research data to XNAT and uploading it to XNAT format, to XNAT hierarchy and uploading it to XNAT. So we are talking about non-DICOM data. And that's going to be done with a tool that's called XNAT Desktop. It's been around for a while. It's still in development mode. I believe have never been released, but there's a version available to run. We just don't mark it as release. And our use case, and so what XNAT Desktop does is tag your files in some specified directory and subdirectories with predefined name value pairs, which are tied to XNAT hierarchy. And this way, you can build XNAT hierarchy of an arbitrary file system on a hard drive and then upload it using this tool. And the use case would be when you have a project with lots of non-DICOM files stored on the hard drive, consistently organized. That would be important. And you want it archived in XNAT for sharing. And the only prerequisite is basically to have some patience and dedication, to have time to learning the little scripting language, the little XML-based language that describes those associations using regular expressions. I'll detail in a second. So here we are. Here's the model project I'm going to use. That's the very simple directory structure that is on our hard drive. And in more detail, on the left you see our experimental design and the kind of implied data structure that we have. So the data is organized as a mouse experiment. So there are some computation results stored in the same directory. Then there are fluorescence imaging snapshots. And what we want to do, so the first step would be to identify fitting XNAT hierarchy where you want to put it. And that is basically critical for the design of the entire process. And here, so what we've done is call this mouse a subject and call an experiment. Because each experiment is already assigned some unique number, we just make up the name for the experiment as subject_experiment. And then there is a common experiment resource folder with a directory called auxiliary for all the computational data. And we call the TIFF imaging snapshots belonging to individual scans, and the individual scans will have scan resource associated with it, because scans per se just contain DICOMs, so this would be a non-DICOM scan resource. So that would be the XNAT structure we're targeting. And the customization, well, and the XNAT Desktop has a built-in algorithm that will execute a series of searches at each directory level according to the instructions which are saved in this XML file using using the set of instructions that I'm I'm going to talk about a bit more. And the XND will further use the tags that it assigns using these instructions to put each file in the appropriate place in XNAT hierarchy. So here is the beginning of that rule XML file that's called the rule file because we're using rules. That's what we call the those algorithms that's applied by the user. So it basically just searches through each directory, each level, starting from the top directory and trying to match patterns and assign tags. Each entity, which are folders and files, would have children that would either be other files or it would be assigned some tags. And basically all this XML does is describe how those tags will be assigned based on file names, based on folder names, whether those folders are, those names are applied recursively or not. And there's a number of things you can do with it. So the XML here, for example, will tell the following to the algorithm. For each directory at root level, look for immediate subdirectories that start with conv, and for each file in each subdirectory, assign these tags. For example, tag subject has a field called pattern, which tells it that all the children of this directory will use the name of this directory based on this pattern to be assigned this tag. And this might sound a bit complicated, but it's actually not. I'll show in a second. So the rest of tags are assigned in a similar way. And there's I don't stop here for detailed explanation. There's a detailed wiki page for all this, and there's a detailed wiki tutorial for XNAT Desktop as well. And now we just add that XML naming rule into XNAT Desktop, and I can actually go here in XNAT Desktop. So we see our files populated here in the XNAT Desktop. So we apply the rule I have created for it. And again, look at the tags. So there are tags with names that are just intuitively close to XNAT hierarchical entities like project, subject, except for modality, which corresponds to image session type. It's just historical, it's called modality. But otherwise, that's pretty intuitive to guess what would be the hierarchy levels at the XNAT. And we can actually preview the hierarchy created for us from these files. So that's where these files will go in XNAT for each subject. So now we are looking at the tree view that corresponds to XNAT hierarchy, starting from project to subject, experiment, etc. And now we just, at each level, starting from project or below, at each level between project and experiment, let's say that. We just click upload, which will put the corresponding experiment to XNAT. And just looking back to the web page, to that project, we'll see that our resource has been populated according to the tags that were assigned. So there are according to that hierarchy that we've seen in the very beginning, how we define the mapping. So there will be auxiliary resources with computation files. There will be 3 different scans, and each scan would have a resource with a corresponding TIFF file. And don't mind the size of the files; those are all just fake files, not the real data, to speed up the upload. So it might take several iterations to get exactly what you want. So I usually just experiment on one session, on one subject. And when it's done, if you have hundreds of sessions to upload, that can be fairly fast, depending on how well your data is, how consistent is your data on a hard drive. So basically, this is a way to speed up population of XNAT projects with non-DICOM data for any purpose that is beyond the scope of this presentation. And also some final notes to upload additional metadata. We would recommend the spreadsheet uploader for additional demographics, custom variables, etc. And for detailed tutorial, this wiki page, and for full XNAT Desktop reference, there is this page. So I think this is it. Thank you very much.
Have naming rules already been set up for like the bids?
No. I'm sorry, for what structure?
It's like a proposed common file structure. It seems like it could be pretty useful.
Yeah. That's exactly the plan, is that imagine that there will be various standard or semi-standard directory structures that people either have within a lab or emerging as a global standard, and that you don't have to go through and do all this tagging and stuff yourself and building out the regular expressions, but that we'll be able to distribute with XNAT Desktop a import via bids, and you just click on that and index your data that you've got sitting on your hard drive and submit.
Can this be automated? You have to run it through the desktop? Can you script it somehow?
So the only part that you need to script is this XML document. The rest is you run it through the GUI, but basically there's no further interval. And the point in the GUI is if you don't have completely organized data, there's always a way in XNAT Desktop to manually assign as many tags as needed. So there are many tools to assign individual project, experiment labels, and up to resource label. So that would help if the data is not completely 100% homogeneous and you can't completely program around it. Well, the other way, of course, would be to just modify the data, but sometimes it's not a good option. But again, to answer your question, there's no completely scripted command line interface. This is purposed to be a desktop tool right now.
And Misha, as I recall, if you have files that aren't being indexed because for whatever reason they're named wrong or whatever, there's a way to view ones that haven't been properly tagged yet, and you can find those.
I didn't program it on purpose, so there's definitely you definitely review all the tags that's been assigned here in the hierarchical view. And here, if some files weren't tagged, or more like, well, you just won't see them here. Yeah, so have to check. Would be a good feature to have like a pool of incoming and outgoing files. There's a check before you upload. There's a check for all required tags being present. So right now.
Thank you, Misha.
Mm-hmm.